Hello and welcome to Dollars and Cents, the Australia Institute podcast where we're talking about just what the hell is going on in the economy. I'm Elinor Johnston-Leake, the senior content producer here at the Australia Institute, and as always, I'm talking to our chief economist, Greg Jericho. Hello, Greg.
Hi, Elinor.
How are we doing today?
I'm doing very good. Chipper and, well, I'm just good.
You're good.
It's Thursday.
You tried.
The week is getting close to the end. All is good.
All is well.
Big week, though, this week.
Yeah, it has been a big week this week. The RBA met on Tuesday, like we talked about last week. You predicted that they were going to raise rates. And lo and behold, they did just that.
The RBA has lifted the cash rate by 25 basis points or a quarter of a percentage point.
And it will add more pressure to already stretched household budgets.
Now, I know this is not the news that Australians with mortgages want to hear, but it is the right thing for the economy.
Now, this will be difficult news for millions of Australians with a mortgage, and we understand the pressure that this puts on Australian families and businesses.
Of further concern to borrowers and consumers, the RBA says it considers inflation is likely to remain above target for some time.
Yeah, but they didn't listen to my advice of not to raise rates.
They don't seem to listen to your advice.
Are they listening to this podcast or not? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
We got to get all the people in Martin Place listening to Dollars and Cents so they know
aren't
what
responding
to
your DMs. Yeah.
But they did, as expected, raise rates from 3.6% to 3.85%. And if you're like me and you are fortunate enough to have a home loan, you got an email from your bank about 30 minutes afterwards saying, hey, we're raising interest rates in a couple of weeks. So, banks were all very eager to follow suit and hike up their rates. Not a great decision, I think, but they certainly not unexpected.
Yeah, I actually got a notification from my bank saying, we're actually passing on the interest rate to, what's it called? The returns on like my account.
Oh, your deposits?
Yeah, my deposit.
Oh, that's nice.
I was like, that's very lovely. Yeah. So, even though I don't have a mortgage.
You're cheering more interest rate rises
I get an
is
extra,
what Elinor is saying.
Maybe $1 or something.
Exactly.
Yep. But yeah, Greg, this is actually the first time that the RBA has raised rates in how long? 2 years? A bit over 2 years?
Yeah. I mean, we had 3 interest rate cuts last year.
Yeah.
So which everyone was hoping might signal the end of rate rises. But their belief was that inflation took off a bit too much at the latter part of last year. And as a result, they need to raise interest rates to cool everything down because the economy is almost at its capacity, which is a frightening thought given it's not running all that hot. And, the talk now is, well, there's two bits of sort of debate. One, does raising rates now mean cutting them last year was a mistake? And there was a bit of questions directed towards Michelle Bullock about this. And one of the rare times, probably rare times, I agree with the Reserve Bank and Michelle Bullock's response of basically saying, do you remember last year? Do you remember when the Reserve Bank cut rates? The economy was not running very well. It was basically growing purely because of the public sector. The public sector was keeping things going. The private sector was struggling. Households weren't spending much at all. Everyone was kind of doing it tough. And if they didn't cut rates when they did, unemployment definitely would have kept rising faster than it was. And, we might have been sort of slowing into maybe a recession, but a definitely very sort of sad state of affairs. So I've got no problems with the Reserve Bank cutting, then the next year raising, then cutting. I mean, there seems to be this weird thing of, you need a certain amount of time to go past before you can do the opposite. Why? As Michelle Bullock points out, if circumstances change, so does their policy. Now, I disagree on how much those circumstances have changed that warrant a rate rise, but I don't fault that logic of saying, hey, we cut them last year because the economy needed it. Now we think the economy needs a rate rise, so we're raising them. And this sort of suggestion, this, post hoc ergo propter hoc, because something has happened afterwards, it, proves something.
You're busting out the Latin on the podcast today.
just because the raising rates now doesn't make last year's rate cuts a mistake.
Yeah, but you think that raising rates this time was a mistake?
Well, yeah, I think there's a couple of things that are going on in their explanations. Were saying, private investment took off more than they expected. And as listeners will know from our last pod last year, when we're looking at the GDP figures, there was a big boom in AI data centers, really sort of abnormal jump. And even the Reserve Bank in their statement of monetary policy says, I don't know if this is really flowing through to the economy, but hey, there's a lot of investment. And they also point out there was a bit of a jump in household consumption. But again, they kind of downplay it a bit in the statement on monetary policy, which is their 3-monthly sort of statement on what's happening in the economy. And in that, they sort of point out, there was an increase in household spending, but also it seems like people are changing their spending habits and spending a lot more around the Black Friday sales, and it's almost like people are anticipating them now and waiting for them. And so is it a lumpy thing? Like, is it just a one-off boost? Is it ongoing? They're not sure. And yet they're kind of acting like they are sure in increasing rates. And one of the things in the governor's statement, or in the Monetary Policy Board statement that was put out on Tuesday explaining it, they noted that, the exchange rate has started to go up, bond yields have gone up, the money market has moved, all are basically anticipating a rate rise. And I'm like, so what? Who cares? It's not your job to make sure that these speculators win.
Get a win,
So I found that a little bit curious and made me suspect that all the commentary that was coming from a lot of economists and a lot of conservative economists and commentators and the money markets and all this were like, we kind of better do it because it's expected, and if we don't, then there's going to be a lot of commentary about, are we serious about keeping inflation down? Are we credible and all this? And so it's a little bit, if they do this, they can say, yes, we are credible, we are serious.
Yep.
And that's why last week I was saying, look, this is the safe bet, the safe choice, because they do it, no one's going to say, oh, God, why are you raising rates? Everyone's going to go, oh, you're being tough on
They've
inflation.
got their excuse because of
and
jump.
That's why I was saying, though, the smart move would have been not to, but to an extent I can see why the Reserve Bank is worried about that criticism, because if the Reserve Bank is constantly being criticised by media and economists, talking heads are going, oh, they're not serious about it, then, it's not just a pain in the ass for them, but it is something that can sort of bleed into investors and speculators starting to distrust the Reserve Bank, which is not what you
say this
want.
knowing that you are one of those economists that criticizes them.
Yeah, but I criticize them in the sense that I'm not going to go out and short the bond yields or things like that. I'm sort of just talking in a macroeconomy sense, whereas they have to worry a little bit about, okay, if investors are starting to distrust or feel like they have no surety of what the bank is going to do, that can get a bit messy. And also if there is this sense that they're not serious about it, if they haven't got their big boy pants on about fighting inflation, then that can lead to some issue. I think they get overblown, but I can understand why they do.
A little bit of tail wagging the dog.
Yeah, a little bit, and also just making it. It's always interesting or brave, I guess, for the Reserve Bank to surprise the market. And I just don't think they were in the mood to surprise at this time.
Not in the mood for surprises. No. Moving on to high schools. We've got some new research out at the Australia Institute, which shows that Australia is the most expensive country in the OECD to send a kid to high school. It costs Australian families $4,967 a year on average to send a kid to high school, which is almost 4 times the average in the OECD. Greg, what are we doing here? What's going on?
Yeah, this comes from some really excellent research done by Sky Predovac here at the Australia Institute. Really interesting report that got quite a lot of attention because everyone's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And really what's going on here is Look, I don't know if you've heard of a little bloke called John Howard.
I feel like we might have mentioned him a few times on this podcast, yes.
What John Howard very much wanted to do was essentially privatise Australia's education system.
Yeah.
And so really started jacking up funding for private schools and, look, if I'm really cynical, underfunding public schools to make parents and families think, oh, maybe we should give the private school a go because the public school's underfunded and hadn't got the resources.
If you were a cynical man, you would say something like that.
And so we are, Australia across the OECD, so across all advanced countries, has the second highest rates of kids attending private high schools. Chile is the only one who's above us.
Interesting, yep.
We are, I think it's close to 40% of Australian high school kids now go to private schools, whether it's Catholic or independent schools. That is a massive amount. And it basically means that the cost, because you got to pony up to go to these things, it means that average cost is so much higher than other nations because we've basically privatised our education system. And privatisation, I'm sorry to tell you, ain't cheap. It doesn't deliver cost benefits, and it actually doesn't even deliver, good services or better benefits for society. It does, deliver money going to certain places and certain organisations, but, this is the end result.
Yeah. So how much does Australia spend on, say, private schools versus public schools? Because the government does have to contribute a certain amount for each student to private schools as well.
Well, they don't have to. I mean, this is the thing. It's a choice. Australian governments, and look, this is a historically long fight. Back in the 60s and 70s, this was a big fight over whether governments should fund private schools. In other nations, they don't.
Yeah.
If you're a private school, good luck to you.
Yeah, that's your choice.
And if governments in, I think it's UK and other places, if they fund a private school, that school can't charge fees. So, they might be a religious school and they get funding from the government, but they can't then go and say, well, it's going to cost $50,000 to come to this school. It's a free school. It's just government is helping fund it. But in Australia, all the private school funding comes from the federal government. The states do most of the funding for public schools. The federal government is the one that does the non-government schools. It also does, however, kick in funding for public schools as well. And in this current financial year, the federal government spending $12.2 billion on government schools. Sounds nice.
Okay.
They're spending $20 billion on non-government schools.
Right. Yep.
And what Sky's report found is that it's not like this is delivering any benefits.
Yeah.
Because what's happening is, especially with some of these top-end private schools, they're charging $55,000 a year. It's not like they need to charge that to deliver the services, because if that was the case, they wouldn't be able to afford to upgrade the swimming pool and get a new yacht club or whatever, indoor tennis courts and things like that, because you'd be like, oh, we're struggling. We got to charge $55,000 just to get the kids here. No, what's happening is they're actually charging that much because they actually want to keep it exclusive.
Yeah, they want the amenities like the, rifle range or whatever it is.
No, it's more we want to keep out the people who
so it's a barrier to entry. Yeah.
In a sense, private schooling at a certain level has become a bit like luxury fashion. Luxury goods like handbags and things like that. Louis Vuitton doesn't charge a shit ton for their handbags because they cost a lot to make. Yes, they might cost more than if you're just churning them out.
Something off Shein.
But part of that thing that they're doing is we want these to be exclusive. There's a benefit to us in it being exclusive, and it's the same with going to King's College.
Yeah,
they're not charging that because they've got all these rifle ranges or whatever. Yeah, there's a bit of cost to that, but really the cost is we want only the right people to be able to come here because then we're an exclusive good. And you think, okay, well, that's fine. You know, we've got that in UK with Eton and Harrow and all these things.
If people can pay for it, sure.
Yeah. But why is the government helping these with $1 million a year or so per these schools when they are literally saying, no, we don't want, working class people to come to this, or we might hand out a scholarship or so if they're good at footy, And this is the problem. We are funding these schools that want to be exclusive. It's like, well, fine. If you want to be exclusive, do it yourself. There's no government benefit in us funding a school that is pitching itself to prospective parents as exclusive, as you're going to be basically able to network your ass off here at this school. If you come to this school, your kid's going to be surrounded by future wealthy kids.
Yeah. Current wealthy kids.
Yeah, current wealthy kids who are going to
be wealthy adults.
Yeah. And also what Sky's report points out is actually the results that are being delivered are negligible. Like it's that you're not getting a better education at a private school than at a government school. They might get better results. They might look like they're getting better results, but really what they've got richer kids who have got access to more equipment, more,
tutoring,
and stuff like that. So and we know that the real determinant of education outcomes isn't whether it's private or public, but actually the postcode almost. If you're in Burnside in Adelaide, if you're in North Sydney in Sydney, if you're in, wealthy places, you're probably going to have better results from those kids than if you're from poorer areas. So it's to do with socioeconomic things. And it's like, okay, well, that's fine. Public systems should be trying to counteract that. But also then why are we funding private schools to basically exacerbate that? And here's the other thing. We know that this is the case because as more and more people are going to private schools, the gap between public and private school results is shrinking because what's happening, people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds are going into independent schools. So independent schools' performance is on average declining because of the socioeconomic factors, not because independent schools are becoming worse or anything like that. It's just that's the overriding factor. And so we have this combination of we've got this system where, look how much we're spending on education. Governments can boast about, we're increasing our spending on education. It's like, yeah, but you're funding private schools. It's making Australia's system a bit like America's health system, really expensive, not delivering great outcomes. And John Howard thought this was a good idea. We've actually taken it and ran with it, and it's getting progressively worse. Why are we still doing this?
Yeah, well, when there's public schools that some classes don't have air conditioning, and then there are private schools with they're building a new indoor swimming pool.
Yeah. And
what are we doing here?
It's a stupid debate where, if we increase funding of government schools, apparently we have to also increase funding for private schools otherwise, the government is being biased and they're losing out now. And it's like, no, you're not losing out. We're just deciding to focus on these other schools.
Yeah, so other countries don't do this.
No, we have trapped ourselves into this very neoliberal way of education. We fool ourselves that we have a public education system, and we don't. And actually, we fool ourselves that these schools are private. They're not. It's a bit like self-funded retirees. Are they really self-funded retirees, or are they just benefiting from massively expensive tax breaks?
Yeah.
And it's a bit like that with private education. Yes, they're private, but they're publicly funded as well. What service are they providing that their students would not be getting if we didn't fund it? It's not like they'll be going, well, these kids will now have to go to a public school. It's like, no, they were going to King's College anyway for reasons that have got nothing to do with education outcomes. And yet the government's like, we better fund them. And Sky's report basically says, yeah, let's stop doing all this. It's not good.
Well said, Greg. All right. Well, I reckon that's probably all we've got time for today, Greg.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, listening for another Dollars and Cents. Always great to have your ears glued to whatever service you're doing. we really value all our listeners. And, if you feel so inclined, leave us a review, a 5-star review. These really help get those algorithms out there so that other people can find us. But once again, we'll be back next week with another Dollars and Cents. And I can tell you, I think we're talking wages.
Oh.
Wages next week. Also, there's Parliament still going. There's Senate estimates. There's going to be lots of stuff going on there.
Things will happen.
Things will happen.
And we can talk about them.
This episode of Dollars and Cents, however, was recorded on the 5th of February. And some things may have changed. Elinor was just checking that it is the 5th of February.
It is the 5th of February.
If you'd like to read my column, which looks at just why the RBA probably shouldn't have done what it did, you can go to the Guardian Australia site and check out all the graphs there. We've also got lots of posts and also a couple other columns by me on the Reserve Bank and also by other economists, as well as just a stonk load of research on thepoint.com.au. We also have Amy Ramikis's live blog. She is there every day the Parliament's sitting, so she will be there all next week, going through and probably staying up to god-awful late nights while the Senate is still debating things. So check that out. Music, as always, comes from Blue Dot Sessions. Elinor, you have a good week. Everyone else have a great week, and we will see you all next week.
See ya.